So, John, give us a sense of what's going on. There's a lot of activity, a lot in the news about the arrest and the cooperation of a covert, I think they're calling a covert foreign agent named Butina. She is a 30-something woman who had basically been using the NRA to provide an entree into the conservative movement, funding the NRA. Those funds then obviously went to Republicans and conservatives around the country. She was building a network through the NRA, a web of influence on behalf, as far as we can tell, of the Russian government. And so this, of course, has, I imagine, had some impact on the NRA. Well, in terms of their budget, right? I mean, let's just go back for a moment. The NRA contributed an enormous amount of money to the 2016 presidential election, as opposed to years past. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so just tease this out for us. Like, what indications do we have that the NRA sort of had this glut of money and now apparently does not?
Yeah, there's a lot going on with the NRA right now. And financially, what we know is that gun sales have really slowed down since Obama left office. They really used him as the boogeyman consistently the 8 years he was in office to sell guns. And that was a bubble. And in 2016, that bubble ended. And there's been a serious slowdown since then. And as that hits the gun industry, that goes to their front people, which is people at the NRA. And so what we've seen recently, there's been reports of massive cutbacks in the NRA and they're cutting budgets across the board. And apparently at NRA headquarters are even giving out free coffee anymore. And so what we've seen in terms of NRA TV is we've seen some people acknowledge that they're parting ways. NRA TV hasn't really been upfront about it. There's a report in the Daily Beast that this is why Dan Bongino's show was canceled. Bongino and the NRA.
Now, John, let me stop you for one moment. Because I don't know if a lot of people know that the NRA has its own TV network. Are they carried on any cable things, or is this just something that happens online? And just tell us more about it.
Sure. It is streaming online. It's, if you have an app, basically it's where those are. And there's a lot of pressure on Apple and Roku and what have you to not carry NRA TV, especially. There's been some really good activist work done about that. But if you haven't watched, and I certainly don't recommend it, it is a really slick presentation that is essentially the far, far, far pro-Trump right. It's the exact same thing if you're familiar with Gateway Pundit and Jim Hoft. A lot of stuff that bubbles up in that type of realm of the internet bubbles up on NRA TV. Who I was just talking about, Dan Bongino, he has gone on InfoWars. It's very similar to that far right. Bongino also goes on Hannity's show, and it's a nexus, a lot of these far right people, and there's been a lot in recent years of white nationalism, of very, very thinly veiled racist statements. And that kind of thing is what you've seen on that network. So if you've seen some of, Dana Lash's insane remarks the past few years, aside from some promos and when she went to that, forum with the Parkland survivors, most of her remarks have been made on NRA TV. And so it's sort of their front. If the NRA is the front group for the gun industry, the NRA TV is the front group for the NRA. So it is really, they're sort of the tip of the spear where there's the most lies, the most trying to change the subject. The worst of the NRA is on NRA TV. And what we've seen in recent years is it's not even succeeding. They're trying to cut back given the budgetary restrictions.
I mean, so basically what we're talking about is something that's been heavily subsidized. There's just simply not the audience for it that they would have hoped, or this is a way. So tell us about Dan Bongino. Who is this guy?
Sure, he is a former Secret Service agent, and he ran for office, I believe, 3 times. Twice in Maryland, if I recall correctly. I don't recall if the third was there too, and he lost all of those times as a Republican, obviously. And he's reinvented himself in the Trump era as a pro-Trump pundit, and you see him a couple of times a week on Fox and Friends. He's a regular on Sean Hannity's show, and he's been introduced up until the past month as an NRA TV host and contributor, because that's where his main job was. And his main topic that he decided to make himself an expert on for reasons that are beyond any of us is the expert on the Russia investigation. And so he's written a book. I'm sure it's coming out soon. I'm sure you'll see Trump tweet about it. It's going to be, all of a sudden this guy will be everywhere. He'll be doing the right wing media rounds. And he'll say Trump has been framed, and the exact same talking points that you would see if you read Trump's Twitter feed on a daily basis, all baseless, all lies. So that's kind of who he is. And he rarely, if ever, even, you never see him make news talking about guns. So it's not even like it's very similar to the new NRA, where they try to make their waves and they're on a cultural cachet and defending on Trump and not necessarily talking about what the organization is even ostensibly supposed to be doing. And so what we learned this week is that his show is being canceled. There's credible reporting out there that it was canceled for budget in the wave of the budgetary cutbacks that we've seen. Bongino and the NRA TV are saying that it was otherwise, that he chose to leave, even though he hasn't announced a new show anywhere. So at the same time, he's not trustworthy. Neither is the NRA. So it's a very self-serving story, whatever the truth may be.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is what it appears to be is, that two things seem to be indisputable. One, Dan Bongino was not bringing in as much money as they were expending on him, right? You don't let
Definitely.
somebody go. And two, the NRA is suffering for lack of funds and can no longer subsidize this guy and his show. And their attempt to mutate they had done this, but I guess their attempt to even, sort of like increase their reach of there being sort of a culturally conservative mouthpiece has, at the very least, been inhibited by all of the financial and, I would imagine, potential legal trouble that they're in regarding the relationship with this Butina character. All right, well, listen, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about some other goings-on in conservative media. It seems that the Blaze TV and the Mark Levin outfit have joined forces, but a couple of their big pieces of talent have been left out of the mix. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio.